because they were, like, he was playing with them, but they were, like, they're pit bulls, so they wanted to play rougher, so they grabbed their leash and was shaking the shit out of it, and he's like, no, 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 no.
You're gonna scare people.
Well, they were just being puppies, but I thought I might stop and get them something that they can chew on. I'm sure they get bored.
Say?
He said we'll get it taken care of first thing in the morning. We can happen, but I should have been harassing him.
Nate, you are first, indeed. Try and get this stupid thing cleared up. Oops, that. Did the first one of these earlier today on a 6. Well, it's pretty much the same on the 6S Plus. What's up, Miguel? What's up, Spectre? Hello, Paul. How we doing? Greg, how's it going? Uh-oh, somebody changed their name. Alright, so we're going to do a quick repair on this. Trying to figure out my settings on the camera here so I can looks good enough, I guess. What's going on, Lynn? Alright, so let's get this in focus. I'll throw it in the jig. The hardest thing about the 6 series is the underfill. What's up, Fix Squad? So we need to address the underfill. It's not terribly hard. The underfill around this chip is fairly soft. So not a huge deal to deal with it. I'm trying to get my brightness level correct. There we go. It's a little better. Alright, so we're just going to heat this chip up just a little bit to knock the underfill off. On the iPhone 6S board, the little tip that connects by the rear camera has broken off. Looks like FM radio circuit. Will the phone still work with that piece missing? The little tip that connects by the rear camera. Are you talking about the plastic piece? Yeah, it'll work. It depends on where you're talking. Like the plastic piece up at the very top, or the one on the right side. The one on the right side is an antenna piece. The top piece is also an antenna piece. I'm not sure exactly what they connect to. If you go through the schematics, it'll probably give you an idea, but they will work without it. It just may have a weaker signal. So what I'm going to do is come in here and I'm just going to heat this up just a little bit until this starts to flake off. So see how it's flaking off now? That's plenty hot. And we can just lightly come in here and knock off this underfill. We don't want to keep heating this area, we just want to heat it up just enough that this underfill comes off easily. And we can clean around the IC. We don't really have to take the underfill off the top, but just to show when you warm it up how easy it comes off. What's up, Paul? The Pauls are here. Paul Daniels. Holy crap, Paul Daniels is here. Paul Daniels shunned us yesterday, everyone. He was over there on Lewis's stream. He was shunning us. He's got new friends, guys. He can't hang out with us anymore. One should not wear long sleeves. Yeah, that's very true. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to grab the TriStar on both sides. Now I'm barely touching this. Like I can, I'm not like squeezing the crap out of it. I'm just barely touching the chip. And what I'm going to do is I'm just barely putting pressure, just enough to kind of just move the chip a little bit. So as it warms up and gets to the point where the solder breaks free, I'm putting a slight, like just very slight twisting motion back and forth with my tweezers. And you'll see when it gets to the point where it's ready to go, the chip will actually start to move for me. Like this is very, very light pressure. I'm not forcing it. I'm not sitting here like torquing the crap out of it. I'm just putting a light twisting motion on it. See how it moves? Now it's ready to come off. So when it moves, you know the solder under it has become liquid. I give it just a second more to heat up a little more, and then I lift the chip off. If you're too aggressive with it, you'll lift pads with it. So best thing to do is just wait for it to kind of just give a little bit of torque to it, and when it starts to move a little, wait a second and then lift it. The time it takes to lift is just dependent on how hot you run. So we're going to clean up that solder now. They let me out of the cage again? Yeah. New friends. Alright, so I'm going to add some leaded solder to my tweezers here. And we're just going to go through and knock these pads down. We don't need to wick these pads, there's no need for it. We just want to get them fairly level. There was one small capacitor that I moved while taking the chip off, which is no big deal. So what we'll do is we'll get that cleaned up. See my discussion about a certain high profile individual. You talking about me? I talk about a lot of people, I guess. We're talking about Trump. Okay, so we got that cleaned up. Now we're gonna just go through here and I'm gonna pick off all the excess. Alright, so we got all the excess kind of cleaned up there. Now I'm going to add just a little flux and we're going to come in and nudge that cap back over. So I'm going to wait for it to get up to temp. If you actually place your metal tweezers on the end of the cap, it will cause the solder to melt faster. So I tend to lay my tweezers against the cap just to help transfer heat a little quicker into it. Okay, so it's loose. There we go. So the cap is set down on its pad. When I open this one, no, there was no air. So the background on this board is it came in from another store after one of those stupid lightning fan things got connected to it, and those lightning port fans are terrible for TriStar. So the reason they mess up TriStar is because TriStar is the chip that outputs your accessory 3-volt line. So there's 3 volts that goes out to any accessory that you plug into the lightning port, and that 3-volt line is used to power up things like Bluetooth headsets and stuff like that. Or not Bluetooth headsets, that's kind of dumb to lightning. But any type of like dock or something that may use 3 volts. Any type of accessory, headphones, like normal headphones might work through it. Just anything that would require power. But the problem is the 3-volt line that's output has it's like a 300 milliamp max or something like that amperage draw. It's not very much. It may be less than that, maybe 200 milliamps. But the problem is these fans, they don't have any type of current protection in them. So when you plug them in, it may be perfectly fine, or you may screw it right away. It just depends on how much resistance the motor has when you plug it in. But when that fan gets spinning, what happens is people tend to hit it and stop the fan blade. And with a DC motor, when you stop the motor, what happens? Amperage draw shoots up. So on a DC motor, the amperage draw increases greatly when you stop the motor from moving. So you're taking a 3-volt, 200, 300 milliamp line, and you're spinning the DC motor on it at full speed, and just some people hit it and stop it. So that instantly shoots amp draw up and just fries the TriStar immediately. So what will happen is you'll start getting weird charging issues, or sometimes it just won't charge at all. You can actually go on Amazon and look at the reviews for some of these fans, and there's several reviews on some of them that I've looked at. Like the top review is, as soon as I plugged it in and unplugged it, my phone won't charge anymore, and that's why. It destroys the TriStar circuit, or the IC itself. So we'll get a new TriStar for this one. Chris Long got my Duratool mini shears, cuts through the iPhone 6 shield around TriStar like butter. Yeah, good shears go a long way, that's for sure. I want to start broadcasting for electronics courses, but it's giving me errors starting video. Starting videos on Open Broadcaster, what kind of errors? Plus, these fans accessories most likely induce a voltage spike back in the USB. Yeah, I agree, Spectre. Especially starting them up, there's going to be an amperage and voltage spike, especially whenever you first plug it in. Would you say those fans are retarded? I would say those fans are pretty dumb. I would say people who use those fans are either if they knowingly do it and know the consequences, they're stupid. If they don't know the consequences, then they're just misinformed, and they need to be. Hello from South Korea. So we got TriStar in place. It doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's close. You won't get any bridge pads. We're just going to heat it up here until the chip moves. So if you watch the chip, it'll self-align itself. It'll pull itself onto the pads. There it goes. It's starting to move. Alright, it's on the pads. I'm going to nudge it. Alright, it's sprung back. So that's how easy it is to put TriStar on. And then you can look down the side of TriStar and make sure that it's nice and level, which it is. Nothing much except threats from the north, yeah. Hopefully our president doesn't make that worse. We'll see. What happens if you solder the IC on backwards? It probably won't boot up. I don't look like what you expected. Well, hopefully that's not a bad thing. And if it is, just turn the video off and listen to the audio. Paul. How you doing, Elliot? Yes, go ahead, Lisa. What's the question? Microscope connections as in, like, parts of the microscope or like camera or something. Alright, so the TriStar is on there. Let's test to make sure that it's working properly. I'm just going to plug it into the frame here and plug in the charging cable and make sure that my amp meter shows the proper current draw that it should have. I've put TriStar on the wrong way before. It doesn't work. That's the truth. Actually, I don't have any guns. I've never been a big gun person. My dad had guns, but it was never my thing. We go hunting every now and then, but nothing crazy. Alright, TriStar's working properly. What's up, Freddy? Came here for the Quickie. Well, this will be a Quickie because we're done with TriStar. Now we're going to do the connector on the FP or on the flex cable after I solder the shield back on, and then I'm going to go home. Freddie, I actually need to talk to you about getting a NAND reader for the iPhone 6s and 7 series. I need to research real quick and see which one's the best one on the market to get, because some of them have more options than other ones do. I have an AMTECH camera with an HDMI and USB connection. I can get my USB connection to work, but when I try to connect HDMI to the camera, it doesn't recognize the HDMI connection. What are you doing wrong? Lisa, what are you using for your HDMI? Are you going straight to a TV, or what are you doing? And what kind of camera is it? If you're going straight from HDMI to a TV, I would try disconnecting the USB, or maybe looking in the options. Trying to get my camera recognized to the USB port. Is that what you meant? Or OBS, Open Broadcaster. It's really hot on the fingers. Okay, Lisa, what are you using on your HDMI? What are you going to? Like, are you going to a capture card? So the way mine is set up is I have HDMI going out. It goes into my capture card on my computer, which has an HDMI input. So that input goes into the HDMI capture card. On Open Broadcaster. Okay, so on Open Broadcaster for my HDMI capture card, when I go in and I select, I believe it's video capture devices. Under the video capture devices options, it'll show me my capture card. And what's up, hi. Thank you, Paul. So, I don't know if... Let me see if I can switch to where you all can see this. I don't know if it will or not. I think I can pull it up here. So, right here, this is my... Right here it says device. It has the HDMI capture card. So, when that pull-down menu, I have the options. And then, if I go into that and click Configure Video, it brings up the Elgato menu, and I can tell it what I want to capture here. I don't know why 60 frames is off, but input device, it doesn't really matter. We can set it to other, but I have my settings here, and that's how I set up what it captures there. What kind of CPU do you have, Navaldo? Okay, Lisa, you have to make sure that the camera's outputting on the HDMI port too. You may have to disconnect the USB, unless the USB is just a power. Mine just, I don't have a USB port at all. It's got a controller port, which is, I've got a little hand controller for the camera. And then it's got HDMI input and a power input. There's nothing else. So when I plug my power into mine, it's automatically on. Yeah, Paul Daniels, that's a good choice on the camera. The Sony sensor is much better. You have an AMD processor? I have an AMD processor in this one too. I don't know why it would say it's unsupported. How old is the processor? Maybe it's just not fast enough or something. I've got an AMD FX 6300, I think, with a GTX 1050 Ti as my GPU. The Ti is doing all the encoding. Everything's GPU encoded. Alright, so that's done. Time to do this FPC. So I've already taken it off of this side. This was a screen brought to me by one of the guys in town that does screen repairs. It's a copy. It's got the folded cable. But this connector was pretty badly damaged on it, so I told him I would swap it out for him. So on these connectors, they don't have much thermal mass, so you're going to need to turn your heat way down. I drop it down to 300. Hi's on YouTube as well. He's talented. Alright, so we're going to grab, this is a OEM screen that we pulled off a phone. The LCD panel itself is broken, which sucks because the screen's in perfect shape, like there's no cracks or anything. But the panel itself is damaged. So we're going to snag the connector off here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the flex, the touch flex back behind so that the only cable sticking out is the one that we need. We need to add flux to help promote this to melt and to give us a clean lift. I've already damaged a few of these before. The key is I'm repairing it for somebody else. This is not for me. Oh, the G-line tool, yeah, it works too. But this is fairly simple, so I'm going to come in with my hot air, and I want to keep it fairly far away because this will get hot pretty quick. The key here is to melt the solder and then get your hot air and get the connector off fast enough that the hot air doesn't melt the connector. So I'm going to come a little closer. It's melted and off. That's all there is to it. So once it melts, you want to pull your heat away immediately. Because if you keep your heat in there, what it's going to do is, as soon as that plastic comes away from the flex, the connector is going to start heat soaking that. It's going to absorb that heat a lot faster because there's nothing to pull heat away from it, and it'll melt that plastic instantly. So we've got our connector right there. It's in one piece. It's not bent. It's straight. You just kind of find like what heat works. These are fiberglass reinforced usually, so they'll take quite a bit of heat. Like I'm running 300 degrees Celsius and it didn't melt this. But like I said, if I had picked that up and held my heat to it, it would have just folded from the heat immediately. So it's a really fine line that you have to learn. But if you can pull things like that, it makes everything else that much easier. So we're gonna grab, I'm gonna fold back my home button flex here so it's not sticking out. Okay, so we've got our flex here. Now you got to be careful putting these back on too. Same situation. The amount of heat that this can take is going to be lower right now because the solder and the actual cable does some heat absorption for you. So when those are not present, the plastic itself is more susceptible to melting. Let's see if I can put this back in place. So you want to get this fairly close because when this melts, it's gonna take to it quick. Alright, so we're just gonna lightly heat this first. Get the flux to kind of melt just a little. And we'll line this a little better. Alright, there we go. So heat it up. Oh, the air blew it away. Alright, so it took, as soon as I saw the flux boil and the solder go liquid, the pins pretty much attach themselves because they're already pre-tinned from where you took it off the other one. Now there may be some that look a little light on solder. So in that case, what I'll do is go through with my tweezers and just kind of touch those up a little bit. So I'm going to go through and look at the ones that look a little light on solder. I'm just going to touch them up. Okay, that side looks good. I'm going to flip it around to where I can get to the other side. I'll zoom in a little more so you all can see a little closer what I'm doing. So I'm just melting it and dragging the solder out. And that's all there is to it. So that's now soldered. You don't think that after resoldering this that there's a chance the connector would get stuck in the board in the FPC? I've done several of these connectors this way and I've never seen one come off. The solder itself, the connection is strong. I mean, it's all lead free. What's up, Christopher? I've never had one come off. I mean, I'm sure it's possible. I've had OEM connectors come off in the connector. It's not the end of the world if that happens. You can pick it out. I've picked out many of them. But if VCC main is present under baseband for the 6S Plus, that I don't know, but I can tell you real quick. Let me pull up my ZXW and I will let you know, because I already have a 6S Plus pulled up. VCC main, and your answer is no. VCC main is not present under baseband. It's present around baseband, not under it. Yeah, Bobby, I've done this several times, especially when we get customer screens in that have really bad liquid damage on them. Sometimes the screens themselves are perfectly fine because it's fairly difficult to damage the panel. Water can damage it, but it's just not very common. A lot of water damaged panels, they might have some residual in the backlight, but the actual LCD panel and the backlight will still function. Now I have seen some that don't. I mean, they just won't work, and we've ended up pulling the shields off of iPhone 6s just to get the screen working again for the customer because they didn't want to spend the money because they were paying for the data recovery or the water damage charges. So we have fixed, like on the iPhone 6, the little shield that's on the Flex. you can take that shield off, and there's components under it. It's got capacitors and filters and stuff under there, and some like some filters for data lines. Let's see. Have you experienced iPhone 7 home button failure after screen replacement? Touch ID is present. I have fixed one iPhone 7 Plus that had no fingerprint sensing when you pressed it, but it did pick up fingerprint scanning for the Touch ID. It was the Turtle IC was cracked, which is the silver IC that is located on the Flex. We actually have a video in the other videos I've made where I fixed that. So it is possible to fix as long as it's not a ripped cable. Even if it's a ripped cable, you may be able to make jumpers and make it work. Elliot says, "Hi Chris, I did a 6 Plus Touch LC today and everything went well. I did a restore on the phone and Touch is no longer working. Does that make sense?" Elliot, did you run the jumper to the M1 pad under Mason? Yes, Turtle IC. Stephen is correct. The Turtle IC is the silver chip on the Flex of the iPhone 7 Plus. Still wondering what happened to that phone that I called you about. She never came back for me to send it to you. Which one was that, Bobby? Elliot, if you have no touch at all, first things I would check, for me personally, is I would first check the screen, see if the screen is bad. If the screen is good, then I would hook up a DC power supply with a direct connection to the battery connector. And on boot up, if Mason is working properly and not shorted out underneath, you should get an amp draw of 80 that jumps to 200 milliamps and then goes up from there. If you get a jump that goes from 80 to about 600 milliamps, you have a short under Mason. If you still have no touch and you have done Mason and you're confident in Mason, no touch at all can be equated to Cumulus. But I would think if you were, did you mess with Cumulus at all? Because I normally don't. I only do the Mason chip. Yeah, Lisa. If you look in the links there should be a link to the website. It has our email on it. You can send that stuff to the email. Alright, so let's inspect this connector and see if you all think it passes the test. It's not going to be as clean as OEM because we've had some flux down in there, but I'm pretty confident in that connection there. All those pins look well soldered. I'm pretty pleased with that. And that's one reason I keep around spare screens, is for this exact reason. If we have ones that come in that are damaged, or even if we mess up and damage them, I can replace them out so we don't have to scrap an entire screen. Tested the screen, it was fine. Oh, okay, Bobby. There's probably have backlight issues, to be honest. Hey, Anthony. The iPad mini you sent for iCloud removal? Yeah, Anthony, I couldn't get that one. We put that chip on, actually I put 3 different chips on that thing, and every time it kept telling me incorrect serial number, even with the original serial number on it. I'm not sure what's going on with it. I tried everything I could. It kept giving me an error. What was it? It was a weird one I've not seen. Like error 14 or something like that. But I tried the original chip on it with the original serial. I changed the serial number on that chip. I grabbed another chip off of a phone that was known good, put it on, gave me the same error with the original serial number. Tried another chip with the original serial number and it still gave me the same error. Sorry. The iPad minis, man, I bought 10 of them, and I could only get like 4 of them out of the 10 to work. I don't know what it is about the iPad minis. The regular iPads are not a problem. iPhones are not a problem. It's just the minis for some reason. I don't know if there's something nearby that gets messed up with them or what, but it seems like every single one of them I do gives me issues. Okay, Nate, that's fine. Yeah, it still boots up. It's right here, actually. I kept it out because I was going to work on it. But yeah, it still boots up. It just, it had some lines on the screen. I don't know if that was where I didn't plug it in correctly or what, but touch works on it. It should be good enough to get it going. Anthony, I got a box from you. I haven't I've opened it, but I haven't looked through it yet. It's next on the list, actually. We got caught up today. Everybody's caught up. I started working on Richard's mail-in stuff. We had a data recovery on a 5S that we got done today. And I've worked on 2 other ones in here, and so far no luck with those. But we got a couple more in here to do. 2 more data recovery jobs. And then I think that's it. Everything else is pretty much done. I just gotta mail everything out. Well, that's good, Navaldo. Chris, did not mess with Cumulus, never do. I've done a bunch of touch ICs, not sure. Can you finish your pointers of what to check? So screen, check that. Mason, pull it, reball it, put it back on, see if it works. If it doesn't, the chips can go bad, so replace the chip with a new one. And then if it still doesn't work, replace Cumulus. Cumulus can cause no touch at all if it gets nudged or if there's a cold joint under or something. If that doesn't work, then I would check my voltages and see if maybe the 5V7 Sage line's missing, or the 5V1 Grape line, or any of the Cumulus internal boost, or they're not boost, but they're internal voltages. There's 2 caps next to Cumulus. They should be about 1.5 volts or 1.4 volts. So there's quite a few things you can check. Yeah, Anthony, it's just been really busy. But now that we're caught up, I'm going to start streaming some more. Chris, you mentioned something about the shield shorting something. I missed what you were saying. Shorting on what? On the phone you were talking about, Bobby, I think that it was probably backlight. Yes, Cumulus is the silver one. Thanks, Google. No problem, Elliot. Alright, so for the quickie, that's all you all are going to get tonight. You got a 38-minute quickie tonight. I'll be on tomorrow. We'll do the data recoveries on stream. Am I going to CTI? No, I'm not. But hopefully I'll get out to California event someday. We'll see. Maybe they'll have more East Coast stuff so it's not so far away. Volton, or Vote 1 in. Vot 1 in. I'm getting off, man. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I'm going to head home with the lady in charge over here. And you all have a wonderful night. And Paul will be streaming, so check out Paul and check out Lewis. Don't be a Paul Daniels. Check out Paul Daniels. But anyway, everybody have a good night, and I will talk to you all later. See ya.